Cape Ron, Virginia. When I look through the window, I see my beautiful babies I planted this year coming up so green and so yellow, orange, purple, pink, whatever, white, all the colors. And I thank God for it because we have had rain since last Thursday. And Lord knows we need it because our graves was looking so dried out like so many others because of the lack of moisture in the ground. But God blessed us, which I think last night was the last rain. But I thank God for that. I thank God for you coming on this line, listening with us this morning. We're going to share in the book of Malachi. Finally, this is the last book linking from the Old Testament, and we get ready to go into the New Testament. But that'll be a while because Malachi got lots of info also. So on this morning, we're coming from the book of Malachi. In the proper books, you'll find me on page 116. In the proper books, you'll find me this morning on page 116, the book. We come now to the last book of the Old Testament. Malachi means my messenger. He prophesied after the days of Nehemiah, and the condition of the Jews had become deplorable. He is the bridge between the Old and the New Testament, chapter 3, verse 1. 400 years of silence is between the voice of Malachi and the voice of one crying in the wilderness. And that was taken from John 1 and 23. I can't imagine God's silence for that long. I wouldn't want to be in that time where God just kept quiet. Can you imagine from Malachi to Matthew, it took all that time that he was silent, 400 years. To the central message, behold, he shall come, Malachi 3 and 1. The structure, point 3, the structure of the book, divided up into 3 different parts. The love of God stated, the love of God scorned, and the love of God shown. The love of God stated, Malachi chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. I have loved you, said the Lord. Yet on every hand, the Israelites and the Philippine questions of Jehovah. These questions came from irritated people who said God had failed to prove his love. Note, these are some of the questions that we will go over June the 4th. Wherein hast thou loved us? Wherein have we despised thy name? Wherein have we polluted thee? Wherein have we wearied them? Wherein shall we return? F. Wherein have we robbed thee? Wherein have we spoken against thee? This morning I'm going to go over the overview. Malachi had followed a succession of prophets going back hundreds of years. Not a single divine spokesperson appeared before the nation during the years between the Old and the New Testament. Anyone who claimed to be a prophet was proven to be an impostor. For more than 400 years, the heavens seemed closed to the nation of Israel. They heard nothing from God. You will recall that the northern kingdom of Israel had been taken into captivity by the Assyrians. And then the southern kingdom of Judah later went into captivity in Babylon. All of this occurred because the people had sinned and refused to remain faithful to God. Malachi rebuked the people and the priests by neglecting the worship of God and failing to live according to his will. The priests were corrupt. How could they lead the people? They had become stumbling blocks instead of spiritual leaders. The structure of this book. The love of God stated in Malachi chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. This is the message that the Lord gave to Israel throughout the prophet Malachi chapter 1, verse 1. Malachi, the last Old Testament prophet, preached after Haggai, Zechariah, and Nehemiah about 430 BC. The temple had been rebuilt for almost a century now, and the people were losing their enthusiasm for worship. Many of their sins, they brought the downfall of Jerusalem in 586 BC, was still being practiced in Judah. Malachi confronted the hypocrites with their sins by portraying a graphic dialogue between a righteous God and with their hardened heart people. The love of God scorned. Malachi chapter 1 and 6, verse 6, chapter 2 and verse 17, to chapter 3 and verse 7 through 15. The phrase, I rejected Esau, does not refer to Esau's eternal destiny. It simply means God chose Jacob, not his brother Esau, to be the one through whom the nation of Israel and the Messiah would come. God allowed Esau to father a nation, but this nation was called Edom. Later became one of the Israel's chief enemies. God chose Jacob and his descendants as the nation through whom the world would be blessed. God cared for them in a special way. Ironically, they rejected God after he chose them. In chapter 2, verses 10 through 16, the people were being unfaithful. And that sounds just like us today. Though not openly saying that they rejected God, they were lying. They were lying. They were lying as if he did not exist. Men would marry pagan women who worship idols. Divorce was common or occurring for no reason other than a desire to change. People acted as if they could do anything without being punished. And we know that's not true. There's always consequences. God had got tired of them twisting the truth. And that's somehow this lesson here, you're going to see how it's going to coincide with the daily word today. He would punish those who insisted that because God was silent, that he approved of their actions. Of course not. Or at least would never punish them, because they knew if God said out his mouth, he loved them. And yes, he is full of mercy and grace that we don't even deserve, but yet he loves us that much. God will also punish those who profess a counterfeit faith while acting sinfully. So you know how some of us can pretend that we got the faith and we are full with the Holy Ghost, but it do not pan out at the end. So there are two messengers in verse Malachi chapter 3, 1 and 6. But the first one understood as being John the Baptist, and the second one is Jesus, the Messiah, for whom both Malachi and John the Baptist prepared the way. And we know the story how John the Baptist was a forerunner before Jesus Christ. And he felt that he wasn't even worthy. When Jesus asked him to baptize, he didn't feel like he was worthy to even untie his shoelaces. So you know that is what you call a humbling spirit, full of integrity. Chapter 3, verse 13 17. This verse describes the arrogant attitude toward God. When we ask, what's the use of serving God? What God does it do for me? What does it do for me? You must serve God just because He is God and He deserves to be served. And we on this line today know how it pays off. God promised blessings for those who faithfully, and we're going into the chapter part that a lot of people have a controversy. This is the biggest controversy. That is chapter 3. Why? God is talking about giving that tenth. And that has caused a lot of people to leave church. Many ancient people observed the practice of tithing. Giving a tenth, that is giving a tenth of their earrings, tenth of their produce, tenth of their harvest. Malachi reminded the people of God commands to tithe. The first instance is Abraham tithing to Melchizedek. That God promised blessings for those who faithfully tithe, and says that refusing to tithe is like robbing God. Tithing without love for obedience to God amounts to nothing more than a meaningful ritual, and that's what it becomes. Malachi chapter 3 verses 8 through 12. The people of the Malachi's day ignored God's command to give a tithe of their income to His temple. They may have feared losing what they had worked so hard to get, but in this, they misjudged what God meant. Give, and you will receive. And we have heard that many times. The blessing that God promises are not always material or a spirit here on earth, but we'll receive it. We will receive it in our future life. If we don't see it down here, you can rest assured you will see it there. Thank you for listening. And next week, you will find me answering the questions A through G on June, next Thursday. So we're going to have 3 days left in May, you all. May was well spent. And I thank God for this month of May. I thank God for the last Thursday in May. And that you'll find me here again next Thursday on June the 4th, 2026 at 6:30 in the morning, or a little after that, after we greet and meet for a while. We'll go into that. Thank you for listening. God bless you.